Hi, everybody. Well, it's time again for another Sandra Hartstone show. Say, let me ask you, have you heard about the 7 spheres of influence? This was something that was given to Bill Bright, founder of Campus Crusade for Christ, and Lauren Cunningham, head of Youth for a Mission, Youth with a Mission years ago. It's the 7 spheres of influence upon the earth. Lance Wallnau also teaches about this. He calls it the 7 mountains of influence. Well, today you're going to meet a young man who has really come up with a neat idea. It's called the Nexus Mountain Network. And he has started something. It's an assignment that God has given him. And he has started this app called 7 Mountains Network where you can join that and network with other people that are trying to claim the same mountain as you. He's got some really neat ideas. He's also got a little survey that you can take to find out which mountain you are called to. I know you're going to be very interested to hear what he has to share. And we're going to meet Chad Hawley with Nexus Mountain Network when we come back. Well, welcome, Chad Hawley. Great to have you today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Well, as I said, you are the founder of Nexus Mountain Network, which is all kind of related to the 7 mountain teachings, if people know what that is. And if they don't, they're going to find out in today's show. But Chad, why don't we begin with let's just get to know you a little bit. Why don't you tell us what has brought you to this point? Because I know you probably consider yourself in ministry now, but you haven't always been. So what brought you to this point?
Yeah, it's a great question. And thanks for letting me come on. I'm excited to share a little bit about today because I hope people can be inspired by the story I'm about to share, that you really do have a purpose.
Okay.
And I went through a dramatic experience to find mine out. And I hope that people don't wait like I did, to wait to possible death to figure that out. But I'm married. I've been married almost 25 years. I have 4 amazing children. I've been a guy, Sandra, that has been 1 foot in business and 1 foot in the quote religion mountain my entire life. I've always had a sense of urgency to fulfill my purpose, whatever God would have. And so I've dabbled in both until recently. Recently, I have really pushed myself into more of the religion mountain because that's where God called me. That's where He opened up the doors. This year, He made it really clear in 2022. But it started, Sandra, is about 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, a little over 3 years ago, and it seemed like it was going to be okay, but it got worse. And so anytime you have to go through, if anyone's ever been through this before, it's not fun. And you go through, hey, this biopsy, this scan, waiting on this result. And so I went through this process and I had multiple surgeries. And so what happened was we get to the end of my second surgery and the doctor says to me, all right, Chad, here's the deal. We're going to do another scan in 30 days after the second surgery. If we find nothing, we're on the right track. If not, it's not good because it's just 30 days out. So we go through the second surgery and we get to the 30-day point. We do a scan and the doctor gives me a call and says, Chad, I'm sorry. I don't want to tell you, but it already spread. Oh. And when that happens, up until this point, Sandra, I had what the Bible would describe the peace that passed understanding, which means you have peace and you have no idea why you have it because you probably shouldn't according to the world. And I had it up until this point. I fought, I had faith, I've had trials in my life. I was ready, but not at this point because now this was serious. And so the doctor said, hey, we could try a third surgery, we could try chemo, and we could try radiation. And at this point, I went on my face before the Lord in my bedroom because I started thinking about my wife, started thinking about my kids, and then I started getting upset because I knew I had not fulfilled what God called me to do. And so I asked the Lord simply this question: what is my purpose? Why did you create me? I had to know, Sandra, because here's what I was thinking. I've been a guy of faith. I've prayed for people. I've seen blind eyes open. I've seen deaf ears open, and nothing seemed to be working for me. And in that moment, if I knew why God made me, then possibly I could hold him accountable instead of holding me accountable for great faith, but hold him accountable to fulfill his purpose in me as long as I submitted. So I asked him. So, Sandra, I actually got an idea. An idea came to me that I felt was from God. And so the idea is that I was going to create a Christian-based social network that was organized by the 7 mountains of influence so that Christians could connect, they could learn together, and they could achieve together God's purposes in society outside of the 4 walls of the church.
Now, Chad, just in case some people aren't familiar with 7 mountains of influence, why don't you just share with everybody what the 7 mountains of influence are?
Yeah, I first learned it from I would consider my mentor. That was Lance Wallnau. And him and his wife, Annabelle, has taken my family under their wing. We're so grateful for them. But his teachings inspired me because I was a businessman in the church, frustrated because I knew that I just wasn't supposed to climb the church and get into church leadership and become a pastor or speaker. I knew there was something else. And then Lance came in and spoke on the 7 mountains. And the 7 mountains, in short, are 7 categories or 7 spheres of influence that shape society. And it could be a city, a nation, the world. And so these 7 are, and there could be different names to them, but there's 7 categories. That would be business. It would be, hey, what we're doing today, media, government, education, family, religion, and arts and entertainment. So these 7 places, if you have clarity that you're supposed to be in one of these 7 or possibly 2 of these 7 during this season, which, by the way, God can take you from a different mountain to another mountain. It's biblical. Mm-hmm. And so if people got clarity that they could achieve more besides just in the 4 walls of the church, and they could go into these mountains, by the way, one of the mountains is religion, which is in the church, then maybe, just maybe, we would be out affecting the world. And so instead of complaining about what's going on in the education system or complaining what's going on in politics, maybe God called you there to be a solution. And it's not to take over, Sandra. It's not to conquer a mountain. It's to fulfill his purposes and bring light into those mountains so that it would lead others to Christ as well. So that all would benefit, not just Christians, but that all could benefit. And so it's a real challenge for Christians who have been inside a church and remain and keep church in church, but then go to work every day or go into be a teacher every day, and they shut off God from the rest of their life. And so that's the 7 mountains in short, Sandra.
Okay. So anyway, continue with your story of when I interrupted you to do this.
Yeah, so I get this idea and I decide I'm a guy at this point, I'm a business guy who has no technical background, but I get this idea that I'm going to create like a movie trailer for a script for this idea. So I get on my computer and I start to use my creative mind, which was important. Instead of thinking about death, I started thinking about purpose. Mm-hmm. And I take my mind and I create a script of this idea. And then I go on the computer and I make a logo and I make a voiceover and I make just sounds and swishes and scenes that would be just like the movie trailer for the next season of my life or what my purpose was. Mm-hmm. And I create this little trailer and it's about maybe a minute and a half long. And I took it and I submitted it to my inner circle of people who are spiritual mentors to me or just a few close family members that would agree. And I said, please join me and agree with me that I'm going to live and not die. And I'm going to fulfill this calling. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know, Sandra, at that time, I was desperate. Maybe I was hearing from the Lord. Maybe I wasn't. But I needed something. So I took it and I submitted it. And after I submitted it, Sandra, my medical situation changed dramatically. So remember, I was supposed to get a third surgery, chemo, and radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So I did this to my inner circle. I did a couple what I would call spiritual things to help. Like I felt like the Lord was guiding me to certain people in certain situations, and they would call me out of meetings that they were speaking at, and there were all these little divine little appointments after I submitted and believed in my purpose. And then I went to the most prestigious cancer institute in the nation. That was MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, which, you know who MD Anderson is. So I go down there. My wife and I are terrified that this is going to be over. And I remember sitting in the, in the medical building, and I could see my wife hand just like shaking. And we were like, what are we doing here? And the doctor comes in, and it was almost like he was acting like a prophet. And he walked in, he looked the cancer was in my neck.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about potentially a surgery that would cut out part of my tongue where I wouldn't even be able to talk.
Wow.
And so this really stunk. And I was a talker, and that's what I did for a living. And so when this happened, he looked inside, he thought about it, and he says, Chad, and I don't know how he did this. He goes, Chad, there's nothing wrong with you. Go home. I'm canceling all your appointments. And my wife and I were stunned. Like, how could he do that?
Had they been running tests that day?
No. And we're like, he goes, and just to prove my point, I'm going to call my shot. But he didn't say I'm going to call my shot. Just to prove my point, I'm going to get an ultrasound to confirm it. And I said, oh, okay. So they could have made easy $1 million off of me. So I went and got my ultrasound. I'm sitting, my blood pressure was really high, and I made the cutoff by 1 point in order to do the ultrasound because I was stressed out. And the nurse comes in, and she says, she opens the curtain. She goes, okay, you can go home now. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what do you mean I can go home now? Like, I can go home and you're going to tell me what the results are, or I can go home because the results were clear. You didn't find anything. She goes, go home. We found nothing. Wow. And so I went from potential third surgery, radiation, all this stuff to nothing. And
how long after you got down on the floor and talked to God about your idea until that day?
I would say that was a span of about 2 months.
Okay. Were you undergoing treatment and stuff during those 2 months?
No, nothing.
Wow.
Nothing.
Wow.
I had nothing happened. I got none of it. No treatment, nothing. That's what's astonishing.
Were you feeling any different?
Well, the interesting thing about the cancer, I didn't feel bad.
Okay.
And so I was emotionally bad because of
Right.
what I thought was happening. But physically, I didn't really feel bad. And so I was just under a lot of stress because of what the doctor told me.
Right.
And so here I was, no other treatment ever since then. That was over 3 years ago.
Wow. So what'd you do when you came out of that hospital? Probably didn't know what to do, huh?
I celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
And I celebrated that God gave me another chance at life. And not only that, he told me what my purpose was. And when I had my purpose, then I knew, okay, what's next, Lord? Father, show me. So, Sandra, interesting thing is, you would think that I would have came out of that and been like, all right, here we go. I'm launching this thing. And I didn't. The Lord didn't release me. So I was in this position I waited for probably almost 3 years, maybe 2.5 years until 2022, when the Lord released me through a variety of supernatural experiences that I had. I had my first angel encounter of my life in 2022. But what happened was, this is how I know I was released. I was actually in Dallas, Texas, and I was on the Lance Wallnau show. And I was an honor. He invited me on the show, and we really didn't know what we were going to talk about. We had kind of an idea, and Lance is such a strong communicator. You can turn on the camera and he can go. Well, I wanted to make a good first impression, and I didn't even really know exactly what we were going to talk about. But what came up on the show, Sandra, was what I just told you. It wasn't planned. It was how I responded to adversity and potential death and responded with, purpose is real. There really is such thing as purpose.
Yeah.
God makes us for a purpose, and we are to fulfill it. And so I talked about it a little bit. I get down to the show down in Dallas, and I come back to Charlotte, North Carolina. And when I come back to Charlotte, North Carolina, we had a big decision to make as a family. And so we went into our kitchen right behind me here, and we had communion as a family to put this whole thing on the altar before the Lord. And so that was
excuse me, were you still working at a job, or what were you doing?
Yeah. Yep. So I was still in the pharmaceutical industry. Most of my career, Sandra, was in pharmaceutical. I had a great 20-year career in the pharmaceutical industry, which I left this year, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I had experience in starting businesses. I have a master's in business administration. So I had some success in business. But my heart was always to do something in form of ministry, but not be a pastor in a church. And this is why this resonates with a lot of people in the Seven Mountains, because they want to do more for the Lord, but they don't want to be in a form of religion. Because religion itself is not a bad word, but a form of it is. And so we had this big decision to make. We have communion, and this is on a Sunday. So 4 days later, I go to my son's parent-teacher conference. And she is a Christian woman, but she knows nothing about my idea for a network. I don't even think she knew I had cancer. And she says, we sit down and she says, Chad, I believe I have a word of the Lord for you. And I was like, okay. She goes, before I give you this word, I need to tell you how I got it because it's significant. I said, okay. She goes, 4 days ago on Sunday, the day we had communion as a family, she goes, I was at a church and I went up to a man to give him a word of encouragement. When I walked up to him, he looked nothing like you. But I started to speak, and when I started to speak, in my spiritual eyes, it was you. I was talking to you. And so I gave this word to this man, and I get done, and I turn to my daughter, my 16-year-old daughter who's standing next to me, and I tell her what I saw. And she says, Mom, no way. I saw Chad Hawley too. So her daughter saw me in the spirit too. And they were 2 hours from here. I've never even met her daughter yet. Mm-hmm. So apparently she knew who I was. So she said, Chad, that's how I knew this was from the Lord. And I said, okay, great. I said, what is it? And she looks at me and she says, Chad, the Lord says you're to start a network. And when she said it, it hit me. And it was like everything that had happened over the last several years hit me, because the fear of failure dropped off. Because Sandra, when I came back from that show, the Lance Wallnau show, I felt like the enemy said, that wasn't really God. That idea wasn't from him. You weren't really sick with cancer. You weren't really healed. And all these things were resting upon my shoulder. But when the Lord spoke supernaturally through a school teacher, all of it went whoom and dropped off. And I went, oh, no. It was the Lord. It really was him. She says, you're to build a network, that the time is now. The favor of the Lord is upon it. You're to build it like an entrepreneur. And I keep hearing the word networking, networking, networking. And Sandra, she could have broke every supernatural rule and could have said, thus saith the Lord. Right. And could have just whacked me with it. And I was in that moment. I had tears in my eyes. I recorded it on my phone. My wife, Wendy, was there with us. And I recorded it on my phone. And chills went, down my back. Hair stood up in my arms. And Sandra, that's when I knew the Lord had touched me supernaturally. It was time. It was time to move forward.
Mm-hmm. So what happened then? How did you start the network? And what does that mean, starting the network? What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. That's what I asked the Lord. I said, what do I do? What do I do now? But it had been burning in me for years. And one of the things that I teach that the Lord has made my life lesson is how for people to find their purpose. And it's one thing to hear a great message like, let's say, like Lance Wallnau. He's a great speaker. He gives a great message. And then many of us just leave and go home. It's another to actually take action. So that's what I teach. I teach people how to find their purpose and what specific steps to take. So now I had to live it out myself. So one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to have a state-of-the-art technology that would help me support the network. And so I started reaching out to technology companies. I started interviewing them, and I realized the cost. And the cost of it was pretty astronomical. All you have to do is Google how much does it cost to build an app, and you'll find out. I was like, oh, Lord, I can't do that. That's a lot of money. And so I found a company that had everything that I wanted, and I found it at a price that I wanted. And I was going to build it like a business. And I had plans for monetization and profit. And then I was going to take those profits and I was going to give it back to the people to help them climb their mountains, to inspire them and help them. And so the Lord, I really felt like the Lord said, Chad, this is what I want you to do. I want you to build this to me and for my people. And the money that you spend, I want you to think of it as an offering unto me. And I said, okay. So I bought the technology myself. And then I built the whole thing myself. And it just was like, I don't know, I'm not a tech person, but it was just so much grace. It was like shouts of grace over my assignment, where I was able to build something with ease and enjoyment. And then we got to the point where I felt like the Lord said, I want you to launch this on August the 18th, which is 8/18. And 8/18, it has significance to me because it's my birthday. And it also has significance because of Deuteronomy 8:18. And it's been my life verse. But I got to launch the Nexus Mountain Network on my birthday on 8/18. I got to celebrate life.
Of what year? What year?
This year. Just a couple months
so
ago.
this is a baby.
This is a baby. That's why I'm trying to tell you how fast it's growing. We've done that much in such a short period of time.
In like 2.5 months.
Yes, it's flying. So when I say we're in 20 nations, we have representation in 20 nations. Some are very active and some aren't. And then we have what we're trying to do, Sandra. We have a hyper focus in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where we live. And we are creating a pilot or a protocol for a city. And everything that we set out to do is happening. We are growing. We are developing relationships. We're having local events. We are giving away money already in such a short period of time. And so what we're going to want to do is we're going to replicate this in cities. So we're going to have a model. And so go ahead. You're about to say something?
No, I was going to say, we're going to have to take a break in a minute. But before we do, tell everybody the name of your app.
Yeah, so you can go on any app store, whether it's Google Play or the Apple Store, and you can download the app today. It's called Nexus. There's my shirt. So it might be backwards on the screen. Nexus Mountain Network.
Cool. Okay, we're going to hear more about that when we come back in just a minute.
Hi, friends. Dr. Michelle Sherwood here.
I'm Dr. Mark Sherwood.
Many people know about our clinic, but we also have a desire to help people who can't personally visit us, but still want to take steps towards better health.
Our 2-week health reset is a great first step and requires no video appointments or tests.
With our health reset, you will get 28 detox shakes to provide the ideal nutritional foundation, 28 supplement packs with key nutrients, and access to daily videos where we encourage you along the 2-week process.
Our health reset plan is usually $180. Now, it's just $169 with your promo code. Go to Sherwood.tv now and use the promo code on your screen to receive this exclusive offer.
Take a simple step and let us guide you on the road to feel better.
We are back with Chad Hawley talking about the Nexus 7 Mountain app and network. So, Chad, okay, so anyway, you launched the app on August 18th, and how did it start spreading? How did people find out about it?
Yeah, so we had a launch party, and what's nice about it is in our launch party, we wanted representation from every mountain. We didn't want to just this is not church. So we wanted the religion mountain, we had pastors there to support us. We also had actors, we had doctors, we had lawyers, we had politicians, we had business people, we had arts and entertainment, we had musicians all in one place. So we brought them together and had a very successful launch party where we got to share and cast the vision. We opened the floor up for people to speak what they thought was happening and what they wanted to happen. And so part of what we wanted to do is this is a collaboration. As you notice, it's not called Chad Hawley or Wendy Hawley Ministries. It's called Nexus. And the reason is Nexus means to connect or to bind, because we are going to work together. There's not going to be a one leader trying to do something. This is an intentional collaboration. So the reason we're growing is because we're constantly including and asking for feedback on how we should do this and how we should grow.
Okay. So how do you teach people to find their purpose?
Well, the first is revelation, that really true revelation that you have one. And so thankfully, well, I don't know if I'd say thankfully, but my story demonstrates that there really is purpose. So I start with my story. And when people hear my story, they become inspired that they too have a purpose. And then it's time to seek it out. And one of the things that a couple of things I actually teach is from scripture. Like I like to use the example of in Zechariah chapter 4, the story of Zerubbabel. Mm-hmm. And I teach that there's 7 insights in that little passage about purpose, because his purpose was to create, to build the temple. And one of the things that it says in there is that he first had to build the foundation. And to me, that's the biggest thing that people don't do, is they don't take action. It's the hardest step. Is if they say, oh, if I just knew what God wanted me to do, I'd do it. But oftentimes what I teach, like my wife and I have started businesses together, separately and together, some successful, some failed, but almost every time we did it, we took action, took the first steps, and oftentimes it went in a different direction where it would be successful. But if we would never took action, we would have never known. And I do believe that if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time. So we go through and we teach people these principles of taking action and then what happens. You know, not despising small beginnings. Your purpose should look like a mountain and God will make it a plain. Even when it looks difficult, there'll be shouts of grace to it, which means you'll have favor even though it looks difficult. And so we teach people this to help see it for themselves. And another thing that I teach, Sandra, is because of my story, I created a movie trailer. So we actually teach people how to make a movie trailer for their life. And so so we do things like that. And so people
that's like visualizing what you're dreaming for.
Yeah. Or just like, what is, because God is speaking. That's one of the things in Zerubbabel. God is speaking. And a lot of people say, well, I don't hear him. And that's a hindrance, but he is speaking. So we help people find ways, what is he saying? And then we help put it down, start putting a plan together, and take the initial steps to achieve their purpose. And so that is my message. My message is not 7 mountains. 7 mountains provides clarity to purpose. It provides clarity on where you belong and what things you should be doing. And so the other way we do it, Sandra, this is really neat. So in our app, in the Nexus Mountain Network app, we have a self-assessment. And so you go in on your phone, and with the touch of your finger right in your phone, you can go through kind of like, like a disc or strengths finder. Mm-hmm. We have a 7 mountains assessment.
Oh, really?
And so people never have heard of 7 mountains or need clarity on what's next for them. They can go in for free and take this assessment. And what'll happen is it takes about 8 minutes. That's the average. They'll get an email, and in this email, they'll tell them what their primary and secondary mountain is. And then it'll give in our app, it gives a description of every single mountain, including with each mountain, what a biblical example of someone in that mountain, a modern day example of someone in that mountain, and then thirdly, what kind of profession or career would be associated with that mountain. Yeah. And so it brings more information and clarity to people to help them find it.
Now, who came up with this questionnaire?
I did.
You did. Is
Yeah,
it
so
based on your passion or what you like and that sort of thing?
both. So I used to be I have a lot of experience in training and development.
Hmm.
I was, at one point, I was the national sales trainer for the second largest pharmaceutical company in the world. And so what we did was we did a lot of training and development. We would make up our own courses about, maybe it's professional development, leadership, communication style, things like that. So I had experience from my business background, and then I just took what I knew and I put it into this. And I just figured out, it kind of took me a while to figure out the technology to do it. But once I figured it out, I knew it would be a good resource. And it's one of the number one resources that people use in our network today. They come in and they take that assessment.
Wow. Okay. Well, here, I just pulled it up. Here's the first question. Which two were you most influenced by? And then it has options. Oh, very interesting. I wonder if I'm on the right mountain.
What are the options on that question?
Minister, a teacher or a coach, a musician or entrepreneur or entertainer, public personality, business leader or boss, parent or relative, politician, president, government official.
Yeah, I mean, you think about someone that's one question of, I think it's might be 25 questions.
Oh, the minimum number, and I have to pick two.
That's right. So there's an algorithm calculation in there that would make it more probable that we get it right. And there's in most cases, people are excited to see what it is, to get clarity. And there's some people go, wait a minute, why does it say that? And then we help them. As a coach, we will help them to get more clarity on that. Like the number one thing, Sandra, that people get that are confused by is media. And so media is, they think, wait a minute, why did I get media as one of my mountains? I'm not on television. I don't do podcasts. And what they don't realize is media is rooted in a message. What it really means is you have a message that you want to get out. And that's why you're driven to media. So,
Right.
and so that's where like, oh yeah, I do have a message. And so you want to get this message out, and we think, oh, we can only do it by television. And so, by the way, this is a fun fact. I found in the Bible that when you look up David's leadership team,
Yes.
that I actually wrote a blog on this, is that all 7 mountains are represented on his leadership team.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really neat. And so, like we're talking about media, for example, there was messengers that would take what the king said and then go take it to the people. There was a scribe and there was a messenger. That's media.
Yes.
Yeah. So
No.
this is another way to help answer your question. The things that we're doing to help people get clarity, and we really want them to achieve it.
Wow. Great. Well, now, really, what gave you the courage to leave your career and start something like this? Because I imagine you're having to live by faith now. This is
Yeah.
when you start something, the money's not rolling in. It's bare bones for a while. So what gave you the guts to just jump out of a successful career and do this?
Yeah. So I actually, I'm in the middle of writing a book. I actually just wrote a chapter today. And you know the passage in the Bible about, I actually called it, are you a shrub or a tree? And
Yeah.
there's a passage in the Bible where it talks about you can be a shrub or a tree, and it's the tree by the waters, and it's rooted down, and it will
Right.
always produce fruit. And so one of the things that I share about that is that it says when the heat comes or the storms come in life, that if you put your trust fully in God, it will prepare you for what's coming down the road, because it will come. And so because of trials and tests I've had previously in my life, it's not the first time I left the pharmaceutical industry. And so I left it before. It was a pretty wild story, but I left it because God told me to, and it made no sense. And so when I got to this point in my life, when God said it's time, and I did it, it wasn't hard because I had walked on water before. And so now it's like, okay, I'll just do it again, because I knew that when I did it before, he delivered me before, and he'll deliver me again. And so God made it really clear that it was my time to leave that behind and pursue in totality
Oh, wow.
what he's doing. And I have a business that I have and I own as well. So we'll allow the Lord to apply favor upon what we're doing and trust him in doing it.
Wow. So tell me, how is this network growing, and how are people encouraging one another, et cetera?
Yeah, so actually, it is definitely growing, and the way it's growing is, it's growing, and we're exploring a couple things. We haven't done any marketing yet. It's growing by word of mouth, and what we're doing is we're investing in people, and those people are feeling invested in, and then they're investing in others. And so we are, like, our first event that we had, we asked the people, we broke them off into groups. We had flip charts. It was at a hotel in Charlotte. And one of the questions I asked them was, what are your needs? Because I have a business background, and so I understand the value and importance of understanding the customer's needs. So the people of the network are my customers. And so I look at them as, what are your needs? And they wrote down a bunch of needs. And the second thing I asked them was, if you were running Nexus, what would you do? And it got me a lot of ideas. And so in that first meeting, one of the things that came through loud and clear was we needed to focus on establishing rich relationships and connecting. And so we have 3 pillars at Nexus. The 3 are connect, learn, and achieve. And they have to be in that order. And so we are in the process, we are growing, we're still in the growth phase, but we are connecting. And so one of the ways we're doing that, I listen to them, my wife and I listen to them. And so our next meeting, which is this week, we are spending the meeting hyper-focused on relationship building. And so we're going to focus on getting stronger with our relationships so that we can trust one another. And when we trust one another, we can achieve. And one of the ways we're recognizing people is we're giving away awards. Oh. We have many awards we're giving away. We're giving the Nexus Mountain Network Award away to one person from each mountain who is inspiring by faith to step out and do what God's called them to do in their mountain. We're also giving away our first $1,000 grant. And so we have the ability where people can apply for grants. We have a 7-member team that decides who the winner is, and we're going to award this person, and we're really excited about who we're awarding the person to. And they get to get this money because they said, this is what I'm going to do with it to help climb my mountain. And when you engage people this way, Sandra, with intentionality, authenticity, is they're going to respond. And they're going to say, this is what I really want to be a part of. And you encourage them to step out. And that's our job. Our job is to facilitate, to encourage. And then I've had to lead by example. So I have to know, I can't tell them to do something I'm not willing to do myself or haven't done. I've done it. So why not try to replicate and produce fruit?
Wow. Well, earlier when you were telling your story, as I was listening, I took your assessment. So I could give a testimony on whether I thought it was legit or not, right? I'm teasing. Okay, so it says my highest score was media. How about that? That is my mountain. Yep. And that was like 37.5. And then the next 2 were half that, 17.5, arts and entertainment and government. And I would say that is extremely accurate.
Amen.
Yeah.
You are my...
Religion got a 5. That's true. If God told me I had to go work in the church, I'd cry and go, no, why are you mad at me? I just think it sounds too hard.
Yeah. Well, so there you go. You're validating my test.
I am. That's why I took it, because I wanted to validate. So that was fun. So for all of you out there, I would highly encourage, you see, if you can see here the app, it's you probably can see on the screen. It's right there. Nexus Mountain app. I joined that last week, and well, that was pretty cool. So listen, a lot of people are always struggling with, I don't know what God wants me to do with my life. Wow, that was quick. You can see how fast I took it, because I took it while you were sharing your story. There you go. So, man, I hope everybody will go get that app, Nexus Mountain app, and take that. Boy, Everybody likes to do little surveys like that, but if you're wanting to know, you know why? Because you can't hide your passion. You can't hide your passion. And even if you're like, I'm outwardly passionate, and so are you, Chad, but for people that don't have that kind of personality, it may be harder to figure out what you're passionate about. But boy, you just nailed me there, bro.
All right. That's the goal.
That's what I'm talking about. Now, is your goal to move out of the different cities? Like, where are you going next? How are you going to target other cities after this?
Well,
And why? And my other question to you is, why are you focusing on one city instead of just doing like nationwide?
so we're not, it's good questions. So we're going next where God tells us to. And we need leaders in those areas that are also just as excited to say, hey, I will take an ownership of developing this, and we'll go to those cities, we'll support those meetings, and that's the next step. But we're so new, we're growing quickly, that I do know that from times of crisis in my life, one of the critical things that I could have done is not get too far ahead of myself and focus it one step at a time and allow the Lord to lead. So we're not limited to Charlotte. So what we're doing is, like I said, we have built this to scale, which means this can grow instantaneously anywhere in the world. I'll give you an example. We have a country right now I'm not going to say which one it is, but there's a group of people where the government took Facebook from them. And so it's one of the other values of the Nexus Mountain Network app is there is like a Facebook piece of it that you won't be censored for being a Christian. My stuff on Facebook gets shadow banned like crazy. So anyway, so there is a nation where the government took Facebook away from them, and they lost their form of communication through social media. So they heard about it through a ministry, and so they are there in that nation. They have their own group, because you can do your own group in there, and they have their own group. It's listed under their nation, and they type with their own native language. And because of Google Translate, I can go in and encourage them, and I'll type something in their native language and put it right in the app, and I can communicate with them. And so,
wow, that's awesome, Chad.
Yeah, they're really blessed. So we do see this growing for a lot of reasons. We're doing a hyper focus in Charlotte because in terms of the network part and establishing a relationship, we need to know what good looks like so we can reproduce it. And so we're getting close to that, to reproducing that. But we'll wait for the Lord to tell us where to go next.
So you think it'll be city by city instead of just saying, all right, we've tried it now in Charlotte, now let's open up the whole U.S.?
Well, we have to have people. We need to have leaders. So, for example, you're in Texas, you're in it, but you're not doing what we're doing in Charlotte. So if we have a leader that's local that's saying, hey, I will help with this, and they're the right people that share with us, then we can partner with them to actually do something.
And this is because you want to be able to get people in the same room, face to face, skin to skin, so to speak, just...
Sort of. I mean, there's really power in that. It's really just that touch and that talk, and it's personal. It's not the camera, because we've had enough of the camera where we want to go into a city and we want to establish those relationships. But we got to have, so it can be done. We've tried, we're trying different things. We did a cyber meeting where people from the network can come in, right in a Zoom call, and we can start talking. But there's just so much value in establishing a personal relationship face to face. So that's where we would like to go.
So do you feel like, okay, we're all concerned about America, in the woke culture we're in and losing our freedoms and that sort of thing. Is your goal, do you hope that by people really pursuing their purpose and being an influencer in these different areas, that this is going to be catalytic as one of the catalysts in our country to help bring America back to where it needs to be?
No question. We need models of courage. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, this is a story for another day, but I know personally what I have done to model courage, to stand up for what's wrong and allow the Lord to use you to make a difference. And the more people we can get in these relationships and see what the other person is doing, they're going to say, I'm going to do it too. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to be the answer in education. That's why we're giving these awards away, because we want to highlight those people that said, I'm the answer in education. I'm the answer in politics. I mean, we've had the pleasure that open doors, with instantaneous open doors, where congressional candidates are, by the way, we have podcasts in our network.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can go into the app and you can see people that we interview who are saying, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to be a part of the solution. And we interview them so other people can learn and be inspired to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And we've had governmental doors open to us in such a short period of time to be an influencer for God's purposes.
Wow.
So
That's
yes,
true.
I do believe
Because,
that's the answer.
you know, with all that's going on, it's like we are in some kind of identity crisis, you know, and the church needs to be emboldened. And that is the one thing the church is lacking. The church needs to know who they are. They need to know what their purpose is. They need to know who they serve, and they need to be courageous and get out there. And we need to take this land back for the kingdom of God. Oh,
Yeah.
you talk about an identity crisis. My gosh. Well,
Here's
Chad,
what-
you
here's
are an
what-
inspiration, and I want everybody to check out your app, Nexus Mountain Network, and go on there and take that little quiz. You saw how quick it was. I did it in less than 5 minutes and get some answers, and then start listening to some other people. If you're still looking for what you want to do, listen to what other people are saying on here. And you know why? Because somebody will say something and it'll trigger an idea in you. Thanks so much for joining us today, Chad. I wish you the best with the Nexus Mountain Network. Godspeed.
Thank you.
Wow.
Right.
Thanks so much for coming on today, Josh. Best of luck to the Nexus Mountain Network. Godspeed.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Josh, did we make that? Yes, no, maybe. I think we did. I had a timer going.
At the end.
What did I say? All right. Okay. How much time do I have to do the outro? Like 10 seconds? Okay. Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Chad. Best of luck with the 7 mountains. Thanks so much for joining us today, Chad. I wish you the best with the Nexus Mountain Network. Godspeed.
Thank you.
See, he's Josh. Josh, you keep messing with me in that name thing.
So Josh, I'm curious, on my screen, you guys are really blurry. Is that just because it's on my internet? Can you see me okay?
Yeah, you're sharp.
Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. All right.
So
'Cause I look-
instead of me recording